Thank you, Mr. President. I come to the well on a point of personal privilege today to share my experience of what happened to me yesterday. A whistleblower reached out to my office and said, I've got something mighty disturbing going on at the Atlanta airport. He was a worker at the Atlanta airport. He said on Mondays and Tuesday nights between about 7 and 11 o'clock at night, he said illegals, immigrants, come into the Atlanta airport. He said they bring them right through the domestic terminal. He said, I think you should come out and take a look. So yesterday I did. I went to the Atlanta airport and I showed up at that domestic terminal, and he said they'll be clear as day. They'll be walking right out. I waited for about 2.5 hours. I looked at every single person coming out, and I only saw 1 or 2 people that you might suspect as being an illegal immigrant. And finally, the whistleblower comes over to me, and he says, Senator, you're looking in the wrong place. He said, they're up there on the 2nd floor. You got to go up there. He said, you'll see 2 members of the U.S. Army sitting outside of a door. He said, tell them I sent you. And I did, Mr. President. I went up there and I walked past some caution tape, and there I had a man behind me with a cell phone. He was videotaping all this. And I go up to the U.S. Army man and I said, sir, I'm Senator Colt Moore. I represent Northwest Georgia. I said, I hear there's some illegal immigrants around here. Could you point me in the right direction? And he pointed at the door across the way. Mr. President, about that time that door opened. And I stepped inside, and it was full of people from all corners of the globe. There were NGOs there sorting paperwork between them. Some of them were walking out and out onto the streets of Atlanta. Others were vying for a ticket somewhere else. Mr. President, I grabbed my phone and I proceeded to reach up above the people who were trying to stop me to get a video. At that point, the member of the U.S. Army grabbed that phone, and he and I had a tussle as he took it away from me. But I ended up grabbing it and taking it myself. Video footage, Mr. President, of a president of the United States, who I call King Biden, allowing human traffickers and using the United States Army to protect them as they are being transported through our airport.
You heard it from the man himself. The U.S. military assaulted a Georgia state senator for exposing illegal alien trafficking operations at the Atlanta airport. Welcome to Whistleblower Wednesday here on the Rob Maness Show live on Patriot.tv, and welcome to our simulcast audience on X Spaces. Thank you very much for being here. Well, Georgia State Senator Colton, you heard just right there, represents Northwest Georgia. U.S. military enlisted members who had been leading 30 illegal aliens around and were guarding the door of an airport chapel, I believe, that was being used by a non-governmental organization or NGO to house illegals at the Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport, assaulted Colton, as he said, and his legislative aides to prevent them from exposing this fiendish operation he found out about from an airport employee whistleblower. Yeah, I said it. Fiendish. We're being invaded, and all our Congress can do is disguise a border security bill so it can continue funding Ukraine's border security. Well, my guest today is the author of the article that blew the whistle on this operation and assault. He's a U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, L. Todd Wood, and as a special operations pilot, Todd flew missions for SEAL Team 6 and Delta Force. And now he's the CEO of CD Media, and he's on a new mission to protect the American way of life and rescue it from the destructive grip of the socialist ideology that threatens its sovereignty and everything that makes this country great. With his real-world experience in finance and national security and this passion for history, Todd sees reports on threats to our nation, zeroes in on the warning signs and dangers, and we're thankful for him. Todd, welcome to the Rob Maness Show. First time on the show, sir. Hope to have you back as a regular sometimes.
Oh, thanks, Rob. I've got to say, man, you look good in that suit I've been staring at for 5 minutes. Anyway,
that's part of my little branding.
Happy to be here.
Part of my little branding. The only thing I won't do is I won't wear a tie unless I have to, and I don't often wear it on this show.
Gotcha. No, happy to be here.
Hey,
thanks.
Well, hey, man, that's a great story you broke about this whistleblower at the airport. So, do you think there are more of these locations at the Atlanta airport's a big place? Is there more than one of these little hidden storage areas for illegal aliens in there? Do you think?
I don't know about in Hartsfield in Atlanta, but I'm sure there are similar situations all around the country. We had been getting reports from someone in the airport for some time, and Colton Moore and Mallory Staples, who's with the Freedom Caucus in Georgia, and his chief of staff went down there and documented it all. And we knew that was going on, and we knew that Kemp was lying, and Kemp's ignoring all this, but then going to the Texas border and say, "I'm going to stand up for
Mm,
Texas." He's getting in his pickup truck with a shotgun, and I'm looking for some illegal aliens. I'll take them back to Mexico myself. But he's ignoring all
yeah.
the train loads coming through the Atlanta airport. But the real story on this was the U.S. Army uh, units that were. I mean, think about this. I mean, you're an Air Force officer. Posse Comitatus, all of this. There's some real questions that are raised by an active duty Army service member. I don't know his rank, assaulting a Georgia state senator in a public
Mhm.
place. Um, he went down and filed reports later, but they said, nothing happened. Don't worry about it. We're not going to do anything. So, but the real story is the U.S. Army connection, and also that Kemp is not doing anything.
Yeah, so one of the questions I had for you, it is Army. Do we know if they're active duty National Guard or reservists? Because the question of posse comitatus immediately came to my mind. And folks,
Mhm.
posse comitatus prohibits the U.S. armed forces, active duty armed forces, from conducting law enforcement operations on American soil, is basically what it is. So it's very important to know what unit these guys are from, right?
It is, and we have a suspicion, but I can't release that yet. So, but there are
Well,
people looking into it.
yeah, setting up from for another spot, sir. Uh, so, what about the NGOs themselves? I mean, in the video that his people were that I watched of that, there's like a glimpse of a T-shirt, but that's all I got from it. Who are these
Yeah,
guys, and where do they get their funding?
Team Libertad is the name of the organization, Team Liberty, and they are. It's all over their website. They get money from all kind of leftist organizations. We did a big story on this, and I don't remember exactly who they were, but you can go to georgiarecord.com and find the article on that. And we list it all. We provide graphics from the website. And this is a group that advertises itself as, placing illegal immigrants. They called them recently documented travelers, was the word they used to Senator Moore. So, I think what's going on
Yeah,
is that the U.S. government is funding these organizations, which are funding the migration and the invasion of the United States. So it's a way for the U.S. government to pull away. We're just giving money to NGOs that want to help poor people, and don't you have a heart? Well, really, what they're doing is funding this entire invasion because it's very well organized, very well funded, very well. It's very sophisticated in its operation, and has been planned obviously for a long time.
it was interesting because the NGO worker that answered the doors eventually said he was a volunteer,
Hmm.
which I don't buy one
No,
bit.
no.
He's being paid. His organization's being paid, and I bet you're right. Most of these organizations that involved in illegal trafficking are getting U.S. federal government funding from us, the taxpayers. I mean, I've interviewed Michael Yon sitting at
Hmm.
the Darien Gap and showing me NGO camps that have been set up that show on their little logos that
Hmm.
they're government funded, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean it's amazing.
Well, the app is also a big issue. It's essentially a recruitment app for military age men around the world. They get on the app, they say, I want to come to the US. I'm 35, 30, 25, whatever. And then they put them in the pipeline and get them here, pay for everything when they get here, and then send them somewhere. The interesting other thing I forgot to mention is that we were told that one of the people at the airport, one of the illegal, recently documented travelers, was telling the Senator Moore that he had to get to Chatsworth, Georgia, and he was literally, I think one of them had a nervous breakdown and had to have medical treatment because he was having a panic attack because he had to get to Chatsworth, Georgia. And that's, for people that don't know, it's north of Atlanta, up in the mountains. And why would that be, right? I mean, what would be the goal of that? What is it? A training camp? Is it a safe house? Is it money? Is it a job? What is it?
And is that in Moore's district? Do you know, Chatsworth?
I don't know if it's. I think so, but I'm not sure. I don't know where the boundary lies. Yeah.
Very interesting, because if I remember
Mhm.
correctly, that guy could barely speak English. Was it the same one that couldn't really speak English, right, or Spanish?
Right.
Uh,
Right. But he knew
he must have had a
Chatsworth.
sign
Yeah.
on his. But he knew
Yeah.
the word Chatsworth. Yeah, I mean it's troubling. Let's go over to our live audience on Spaces, Todd, and I always let
Mhm.
them ask at least one question per
Yeah.
segment
Sure.
to engage
Of
with the
course.
guests. Go ahead, Shell. Who's got a hand up over there?
We don't have any hand up at this time.
Well, do you have a question?
Maybe our co-host does. He's just
Yeah.
put his hand up. Go ahead, CS.
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is, well, it's not even a question, really. Again, because I was in the United States Army. In fact, I was almost 30 years in, and during my time, posse comitatus played a integral part. That's why we couldn't conduct any activities within the United States, because that fell to departments like the FBI. Even though it was NSA, it's still part of the DoD. So we actually couldn't formally, and I put the stress on the word formally, conduct any kind of activities within the borders of the United States. That had to be allowable through the chain of command with the FBI and so on and so forth, and of course the court systems. So those were things that we had to do. My question, well, the possibility that it was either National Guard or reservists are great, but it just leaves me with a very odd feeling that you don't place that kind of responsibility with just the National Guard or the reserves that don't do this on a daily basis, that don't conduct these activities on a daily basis, such as guarding prisoners or providing some kind of, let's say, protective service. So, was this possibly directed by one of the other agencies that was then handed down to the Army and said, okay, you're going to do this for us, such as the FBI and the CIA do to or with the NSA? When we conduct certain surveillance or conduct certain activities, they get the proper paperwork and they go through a certain process and then they hand it over to the NSA. What are the possibilities that one of the other agencies has conducted this activity and handed it down to the United States Army?
It's a great question, Todd.
Well, yeah, it is a great question, and I think it's likely. The other part I didn't say is that this guy, and I don't know his rank. He assaulted Senator Moore, grabbed the phone out of his hand, and there was a tussle, in the senator's words, and he grabbed the phone back. As he was leaving with his chief of staff, the Army personnel followed them out of the airport and were screaming obscenities at them and berating them, saying, get the F you know what out of here. And so that's not behavior that is normal for a military person, as you know, Rob. I mean, that speaks to me of whether they were really Army at all, or we saw in Canada where you had our military or the Royal Mounts, run over that woman with the walker who got in front of them after the
Yeah.
truckers were evicted out of Ottawa. Those, I don't think, were real Royal Police either, or they were plants that had been there and told to do something. So I think and this happened in France as well, where you had police, and just in Ireland, where you had them shooting protesters, the farmers,
Right.
actually live rounds, which hit one of the farmer protesters in the tractor. I think there's
Exactly.
been an effort to infiltrate a lot of these uh, national security organizations with people who can do jobs like this, and they maybe don't have the morals and the values and the training or the view of the world like you and I did when we were growing up in that world.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I suspect everything nowadays. We got to take our
Hmm.
first break. But
Hmm.
my suspicion is that maybe they're Georgia National Army National Guard, and we'll hear from the Governor Kemp, who's really putting on a show, trying to show that he's against illegal alien trafficking, and you'll hear from him on the way back in. Todd, I'm Rob Maness, Patriot.tv Live with L. Todd Wood, the CEO of CD Media and former special operations helicopter pilot. We'll be right back.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most private assets, silver and gold.
Call Kirk Elliott, PhD at 877-547-5743. That's 877-KIRK-PhD.
All right, latest update, everybody. We just finished our press conference here in Eagle Pass, Texas, right on the border, as you can see, letting people know that Joe Biden has failed to secure the border. It's made the country less secure. It's made states and governors like me have to deal with fentanyl, human trafficking. Just the stories we heard in our briefing today were incredible. It's time for President Biden to act, and if he doesn't, I know that Governor Abbott and a lot of other governors will. So have a good afternoon.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Whistleblower Wednesday here at Patriot.tv Live on the show, and we're talking with the CEO of CD Media, Todd Wood. Todd, there's your governor, and I don't think I'm doxing you by saying you're in Georgia, or you're a resident there, you're a voter there anyway.
Well,
I mean,
I
he's
used to be.
really
I'm not.
pushing the.
I'm not anymore. But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's really pushing the twang and the we got to stop this, and I know full well that his philosophy is not to stop this. That's why I made the comment about the potential for the Army National Guard units from Georgia. It wouldn't surprise me if he had approved that. The training's not that great for law enforcement for the National Guard unless they're getting in on an operation like what happened with the riots out in Los Angeles with the California Army National Guard. So those folks are probably not well prepared for that. That might explain it. The assault. I mean, the guy basically assaulted the senator.
Yeah, it's a crime. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that great piece of Mockingbird Media News, came out and roasted Colton today. Senator Moore, saying that there was nothing there. He's making something of it. His so-called human trafficking operation is really nothing but, they're just helping poor people, blah, blah, blah. So the Matrix is full in on shutting down the glitch in the narrative right now with that Colton discovered.
Shocker there. AJC,
Mhm.
as you said, is just another tool of the government, really, quite honestly.
Right.
And, when Moore wasn't arrested, was he? I mean, he didn't have any
No.
interaction with law enforcement of an adversarial nature, right?
No, not at all. There
That's
has
surprising.
been, he has been kicked off all the committees. He's the one who's been calling for the special session to go after Fannie Willis, and the governor did nothing. The attorney general's done nothing. They've done nothing about this. You would think that if you're a governor of a state and you uncover a trafficking operation at the biggest airport in the world that happens to be near Capitol, and a state senator is assaulted by federal personnel, and it's just something you would say something about, and the attorney general might put a statement out about it, but there's been nothing. And there's been nothing about the election fraud. There's been nothing about Fannie Willis. The citizens of Georgia have been fighting to get justice and truth and transparency and free and fair elections in Georgia now for years. We've made some progress, but we're stymied in the courts, and we're stymied because the administration of Kemp is acting in a very corrupt fashion, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Kemp's a Republican, but he doesn't act like it. I mean, he didn't support the Republican nominee for U.S. Senate in 2022 until it was way too late. He gave some soft endorsement of Herschel Walker when Kemp won his election by more than 8 points. I mean, that could have swung that very close Senate election on Walker into a win column for the Republican Party. But he just doesn't seem to want to fight to do the right thing on the Republican platform, which doesn't surprise me if he's fully supporting these trafficking operations. And that may explain why the legacy media is not reporting on it for sure. Has he made any comments about this border bill that McConnell and Langford have been trying to push for Schumer?
No, he's absent. And back to your points on the election, I don't believe, and I don't think most of Georgia believes that Kemp won by 8 points. They darn sure don't believe that Raffensperger won by 51 when he was polling at 35. 50 is the point where he wouldn't have a runoff. The elections have been corrupt for some time. Kemp is the one who installed these machines as Secretary of State. I think he knows full well what's going on. And here's something that I am really angry about, and I'll say it on the air. We had 3 Georgia servicemen and women die in Jordan with the missile or drone attack on the Tower 22 on the Syrian border with Jordan. They were not protected. They were sleeping in tents. There was no T-walls or anything to protect them from shrapnel damage. 40 plus more were severely injured. And, Kemp put out a statement, but you have to look at the fact that he was just at Davos for his second trip a few weeks prior with the people who are doing all of this, who are starting the wars, who are pushing the immigration, who are pushing us to eat bugs, who, and live in the pod, and, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. All of that is where that's coming from. And he is the one over there. So I think I don't think he's working for the citizens of Georgia. To your point that why doesn't he say something? I think he's working for somebody else. And this is the consequence and the results we get.
Now, is he term limited? Is he going to have to go find himself another political job to run for?
Yes, at the end of this, I think 2 more years. But the rumor is, and we've had it confirmed, that his wife is going to run. So, and here's something else that Kemp is doing in Georgia. He said publicly several months back last year that, well, the Republican Party really we can't rely on them for the future. And so we're going to, look at other opportunities. So he is putting together corporations across the state of Georgia in every county. There's 30 something of them now. And the RNC in Georgia is incorporated, which in our view is completely against Georgia election law. And so he's building an organization of private corporations to retain power, money, and control in Georgia. And, he is repressing the grassroots in Georgia from becoming active in the leadership. And I could talk about this all day, but it's a big, big problem.
Yeah, I have good friends that are, founders of Tea Party movements and that kind of stuff in Georgia, and I hear from them all the time about the attempts to suppress the grassroots. Well, they get some victories every once in a while.
Right.
On this illegal issue and the town name that this individual was talking about, Chatsworth or Chatham,
Chatsworth,
up in Georgia, Chatsworth. Do you know if anybody's been out there to take a look around yet, or are you guys working on that? Am I too early in my question?
We're working on that. So, our paper in Georgia, GeorgiaRecord.com, the Georgia Record, has been breaking stories left and right on all this stuff. So if you want to know what's going on in Georgia, just put us in your scan.
Yeah, Georgia Record. That's how I came across the article. Was looking at the Georgia Record time. This is a good point to talk about CD media
Hmm.
your media corporation that you founded. How many papers do you have in your organization?
We're up to 13 digital sites. We started in Eastern Europe. People don't know we were cdm.press is the main site, but we started our Eastern European operations in 2015, and we were the ones that broke most of the Biden crime family fraudulent activity and associated U.S. corruption in Ukraine in 2019 and 2020. We were severely deplatformed during that time period. In the period of a few weeks, I lost 8 Twitter accounts, Facebook, Patreon, PayPal, MailChimp, Stripe, CJ Affiliate, uh,
Mm.
you know, just go down the list. A lot of stuff we just got kicked off of, and that impacted us short term. But we've grown and become resilient, and we don't depend on the matrix to get the news out. But cdm.press is the main site, and everything flows into that. But we have sites in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, the Balkans. We're very big on foreign policy and having reporters on the ground. We have papers across the country: the Miami Independent, Georgia Record, Connecticut Sentinel, the Manhattan.press, the Montana Sentinel, Colorado Free Press, Easton Gazette in Maryland. We have Armed Forces.press, which is our military channel. And we have a Hispanic channel, CDM Espanol. So we're growing, and we just started on your competitor, Frank's Speech. So our video effort is growing, but we're just looking for distribution wherever we can put this stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the new boss of Patriot.tv started Frank's Speech, I guess, and he's
Yep.
coming over here. So we're
Yep.
excited about that.
I heard that. Yeah.
Maybe we can get you guys to come on over to Patriot TV. That'd be great.
We're always looking for distribution, my friend.
Well, yeah, that's why I wanted folks to hear about your network, because I
Mhm.
got introduced to you several years ago by a mutual friend of ours from the Air Force Academy,
Mhm.
and I think it's a great operation. I mean, this is how we do it. The reason my show exists. Look, I'm a retired military guy. I don't know
Mhm.
media, but I started doing this because I just wanted to get the truth out and the facts, and that are not smeared by the Mockingbird media. I should use that phrase more often, and I
Yeah.
don't do it enough. But I'm learning from you, Todd. Well, we got some hands up. We'll take a question before we go to our
Sure.
second break, from the audience, and go at it, Shell.
All right, we have Edward, sir.
Hey, thanks, guys. Colonel, if we look at everything as a whole, talking about with what was discovered, if we look at previous videos where journalists was being denied on public grounds at the border, being able to view on how these illegal immigrants were being busted throughout the whole United States, plus what was just discovered at the airport, wouldn't you say, and keep in mind, like what you stated earlier, it's illegal for the military to act as police. But I think what people are overlooking is I think Biden is trying to use the Federal Wars Act to enable them to do martial law. Wouldn't that make more sense of this is a form of martial law he's trying to indoctrinate to push his agenda and, circumvent the laws?
I'm not sure about that, Todd. What are your thoughts on that? You dug into this a lot more than I have at that level of detail. Is that a possibility?
Oh, I think it's completely a possibility. I think these people have been, as I said, planning this for some time. I think they have ways and procedures to get around a lot of the laws, like I mentioned, sending money to NGOs, or even sending money to Ukraine, which gets cycled back to the United States to politicians. I think that was a lot of what the FTX thing was. So I think it's, on its face, maybe looks quasi legal, but underneath it's obviously not. And especially the spirit of the law. So, yes, I think that they are finding ways to use these agencies nefariously, for sure. And a lot of the people may be employed. And, if you're a low ranking guy and you say, go to the airport and guard these migrants, these recently documented travelers. And, even if a politician comes in, you assault him and don't let him in the room, some young guy might do that. He doesn't know. But the older people that are in these positions that do know what's going on, I mean, you're not going to be protected when the justice arrives. And so it will, and people, all of this is going to come out. And now's the time to go to Congress and be the whistleblower on Whistleblower Wednesday and talk to Congress about what's going on and get it on the record that you were helpful in that.
That's a good point. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we dedicated Wednesdays to the whistleblower activity that's needed and that's going on, Todd. The way these programs seem to be protected, it's almost like it's a compartmented program under TSSCI or a special access program, a SAP program, because nobody's talking. And that tells me they're under an additional non-disclosure agreement that they've had to sign, swearing their children's lives away, as you and I both have had to sign before. So it sure kind of smells like it, doesn't it?
It sure does, and I think that explains a lot of the behavior. We've seen how, and I still see it today. A lot of these young kids get spun up over certain issues, and it's really used. They're using propaganda to do it. We look at now. I was just talking to you before I came on the show that Tucker Carlson was put on the assassination list, and we think is run by the SBU in Ukraine. And I have good information that a lot of the senior military officers were pushing. Let's go kill some Russians, that kind of stuff. I find that really immoral and disgusting to push a war like that, which really there was no need to fight. So that's another show we can go into. But I find that the young people, even today, even with the level of awakening that's going on, like you're talking about, a lot of them are still just in the matrix. They're not free minds yet, and we have to keep working on that.
Absolutely. Well, nice segue, because in the next segment, we're going to talk about what I call the Ukraine border security bill, which is supposed to secure our southern border, but it doesn't. It's going on. Most of it's going to the Ukraine. And we'll be right back on the Rob Maness Show Live with Todd Wood, the CEO of CD Media. We're at patriot.tv, folks. See you in a minute.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke. When I grow up, I want to be hired based on what I look like rather than my skills.
I want to be judged by my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up, I want to be offended by my coworkers and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery,
long time no see,
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety and do workplace sensitivity training all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist. I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
That's not true. The New York City Council voted in December to allow this. It begins January 9, 2023. Cities in Vermont and Maryland already allow this, and similar measures are under consideration in Illinois, Maine, and Massachusetts right now.
If the gentleman will yield?
Yes.
I believe those are considerations of allowing votes in municipal elections only.
Right, but thank you. That's the point. Everybody wants to know at home, why would they allow this? Guys, they're allowing it because they're going to turn them into voters. They already are doing this in New York City, largest city in America, and this is the plan of our friends on this side to turn all the illegals into voters. That's it, folks. That's what's going on. That's the game. That's why the border's open. That's why they've dropped it. Look, I
gentleman
respect
The
Ms.
gentleman
Lofgren and all her work in this arena. Yes, I'll yield, Mr. Chairman. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this.
As a New Yorker, I would love to think that New York is the entire country, but it is not. It is not, and consideration is being given to permitting non-citizens to vote in New York, and I believe in the capital city of Vermont. I forget which that is, but as much as I'd like to believe it, New York and Vermont are not the entire country.
But, Mr. Chairman, that's the whole point. This is what's going on, folks, at home. If you're trying to figure this out, if you're scratching your heads, you're seeing the video, you see droves of people, 2.4 million people coming over the border illegally, the president allowing, the Democrats in charge of Congress are allowing it. The deal is they're going to turn them into voters. You just heard it. They don't have any problem with that. They celebrate it. Here's the deal. We have a problem with it. The Constitution has a problem with it. American elections should be decided by American citizens. That's it. That's what this is about. That's why we're jumping up and down and screaming, my friends on the video who are commenting about this. That's why we're so upset, because our constituents are frightened that we are losing our country. We're losing our security, or losing our sovereignty, because we're going to allow people from 160 different countries around the world to come in here and decide our elections. That's it. Here it is on record. You all heard it. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're talking with Todd Wood, CD Media, about this whistleblower that exposed the illegal alien trafficking operation in the Atlanta airport, and a senator got assaulted by a U.S. Army soldier, apparently. But that was Mike Johnson, the current Speaker of the House, exchanging with old Jerry Nadler there, our buddy, about some of the things that they're doing. And one of them is turning them into municipal voters in places like New York City, New York State, where huge populations of people are, and everything. That's one of the things. But this bill, Todd, does it do any? I referenced it as the Ukraine border security bill. But as far as our border goes, does it do anything to secure our border? I mean, I've heard some little snippets of some rhino Republicans saying, well, there's some things I like in it, and I've read it and I don't like any of it.
It's the invasion legitimization bill, or whatever you want to call it. And no, it doesn't do anything. It's very similar. It's very Orwellian. You know, we had a situation in Florida where we found exactly how they were doing a lot of the cheating, and we found it in the data sets that were mandated by Florida law to be produced after an election. And so what did they do when we brought it to their attention at the DeSantis administration? They passed a law called the Election Fraud Act, but it was essentially, it's called the Election Integrity Act, and we called it the Election Fraud Legalization Bill, because they were essentially outlawing the reports where we found the data they were cheating from being provided to the public. That was the extent of the bill. So this is very similar. It has an Orwellian name, but it's to enable and continue the invasion, continue the money laundering, continue the massive amounts of capital going to these NGOs, and continuing the fraud against the American people. I mean, this is it, folks. 99 red balloons. This is it, boys. So we have to stop this.
Yeah. So why does Biden keep saying, I've got to have this law to do anything more? We know that's not true. What is up with that? Where are they coming from?
He's working for somebody else. I mean, these people are not working for their citizens. Zelensky's not working for his citizens. Biden is not working for this country. He's captured and working for someone else. I can say that because I went through all of the data in Ukraine. I saw all of the proof. I listened to the audio tapes of him coordinating with President Poroshenko at the time against Donald Trump. And so he's not working for us. He took money from a foreign power and should be impeached and should be, prosecuted in a fair court.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Well, it's just amazing when you read this bill. Up to 5,000 illegals can come across per day before any emergency is triggered or any other additional enforcement actions are triggered. But I suspect that those enforcement actions, the way they've got it written, that it just expands their their numbers
Yeah.
beyond the 5,000 using the one app
So,
instead
so
of
here's
stopping anything. What is that? What Republican would say, yeah, it's okay, we can have 5,000 illegal aliens a day? Heck, we've got so many people that are non-citizens in this country now. We need to pause our legal immigration.
Well, here's what's going on and what people have to realize. You know, you played a clip of Johnson as a younger congressman there telling the truth. And something happens when these people get in power. They morph into something else. And we have not seen him follow through with his promises to release the J6 tapes, to impeach Biden, to do a lot of different things, which he has not done. And we really have to turn the heat up on these people who are in positions of power, even if it's at your local election board or whatever. A lot of these guys, you know, preach a certain thing, and then when they get in office, something happens. Either they're approached. We saw it with Kerry Lake, where they bribed. You know, a lot of it's money. They come and say, "Hey, you know, we know you got this office, but you know, how's a check? Well, let's make it better." Some of them were blackmailed. Others were plants to begin with. And so that is the problem we have, and we have to just not accept the behavior. We can't accept this bill. And that's just the bottom line, because it will legalize the invasion of our country, and we'll have a one-party state which can never be reversed.
Yeah. Yeah. That happened. What happened to Lake happens all the time. In my 2016 Senate race, I was offered. I'll tell you, I was offered a state house seat the very next election, and I said no. I'm not going to get out of this race. I still have an opportunity to have an impact on this race and possibly even get into a runoff. And we made it public. And oh my gosh, I got the cease and desist letter from the big pharma donor that they were sent to me, believe it or not. And then later on, I did run for that seat a year later, that state house seat. And the big donors spent $80,000 of attack ads against me in 1 week to keep me from winning a runoff, even though my opponent only got into the runoff by about 300 votes. And it worked.
Wow.
It worked. They made up lies. They attacked my family. They attacked me and made stuff up. I mean, that's what happens. That's how politics works. But you know, that's just a little anecdotal, personal story. But yeah, that stuff happens all the time. So, but this, you mentioned that was a younger video of Johnson, and it is. Let's turn to the Ukraine piece of this bill. Now, he's said that he supports funding for Ukraine, but wants an IG and all that, and I do too. And those kind of, I want the IG for sure. I don't support additional funding for Ukraine because I think it's throwing good money after bad at this point. Quite honestly, they're going to have to come to a settlement of some sort of negotiation with the Russians because you know, the West has given all of their technology, as much training as they could give. The F-16s are even coming, I think. You know, it's just not working for them. It's not working for them, and then now you see Tucker goes to interview Vladimir Putin, which is the right thing for a journalist to do. If I had the opportunity to do it, I'd go today and dare them to call me a traitor like they're calling him. But all of a sudden, Zelensky, and you broke it before the break, Todd, he's got him on some kind of kill list. Where does that kill list come from?
We think our sources tell us it's from the SBU, which is the Ukrainian Internal Security, the KGB, the KGB type, you know, Ukrainian service. Look, I've been in Ukraine since 2014. I learned Russian at the Air Force Academy. I've studied. I've lived there. I know the area back and forth. I've had an intelligence team on the ground since 2014, since the Maidan Revolution. The Ukrainian government is not what we're told it is. It is a corrupt. I mean, this is the varsity team of corruption. I mean, they know what they're doing. All these guys, I mean, we think about 30% of the aid that's been sent over there actually gets to the front or to where it's supposed to go. These guys all have billion-dollar accounts offshore. They all have homes around the world. They are stealing our money. And let me just say, I'm not a Putin fan. I know what he's done to the Russian middle class. He runs an oligarchy, a kleptocracy. But I tell people,
Correct.
you don't have to agree with the Russians, but you damn sure should understand them. And when we push and understand their viewpoint, and when we push NATO to their border, this is their near abroad. This has always been their borderland to protect themselves from invasion for thousands of years. And this is what we have done. I mean, we agreed not to expand NATO, and we've gone, I think, another 29 countries and 1,000 miles eastward. So this was done on purpose. Putin can't accept it, or he will lose power. And so we knew this, and we pushed this war. And what is going on with, I mean, I've been to Mariupol, I've been to Donbass, I've been to the front lines. And I know what's happening. I was there during the invasion. You know, I was dodging Russian cruise missiles and paratroopers at the airport outside of Kiev as I fled west to Vinnytsia and eventually walked across the Moldovan border on foot. And look, I mean, there are Nazis in Ukraine. These people were ethnic cleansing in Donbass. We don't talk about this, but they were. And because they wanted certain peoples out of there. You know, Victoria Nuland, her last name is not her real name. She's from West Ukraine. We've done deep dives on this. Her Nuland is just like Chrystia Freeland in Canada, the woman who froze all the bank accounts of the old women who gave $20 to the truckers. Chrystia Freeland, that's not her real name. All of them had links back to West Ukraine and the Nazi past. Freeland's grandfather was a card-carrying Nazi. And it's a Nazi slogan: new land, free land, the new land, free the land of people we don't like. It's an ethnic cleansing type name. And she took that name and made it when she went back to Canada. So I'm not a supporter. I've been writing this since 2014. It's not our fight. They're not an existential conventional threat. They are nuclear, but they're not a threat to the United States or NATO. They can't even take Donbass. How are they going to confront NATO conventionally? Yeah, they have the biggest nuclear force. But
yeah, Todd, that's my view too. We got to take our last break. On the backside of the break, though, we'll take a question from the audience because I know they have some questions about this Ukraine issue for you, considering your experience over there, and I wanted to give them an opportunity to do that. I'm Rob Maness here at Patriot.tv Live, and we'll be right back.
What if this happened to you when you're alone? Or what if it happened here? With MedGuard Alert, you're never alone. You can connect with medical professionals anywhere, anytime. And now MedGuard is introducing our exclusive new Care Watch. If you need help quickly, use it from anywhere to contact medical professionals. No cell phone required. The Care Watch is not only a life-saving medical alert device, it's a revolutionary health monitoring system that checks your blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation, and much more. And here's the best part. If you have Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. The Care Watch is only available through MedGuard Alert. Call us right now. We have monitoring programs starting as low as $1 a day. The call is free, activation is free, shipping is free, and no contract is required. Remember, with Medicaid, you may qualify to get your Care Watch for free. Don't wait. Call us to get your Care Watch right now. Operators are standing by.
This administration from day one came in and they dismantled every effective tool and authority we had in place and intentionally unsecured the most secure border that we had in our lifetime. Look, just do the math. In the first 36 months of this administration, we've encountered over 280 aliens illegally trying to enter the border on the FBI's terror watch list. In that same time period, they've encountered tens of thousands of what we call special interest aliens that come from countries that we know sponsor, harbor, and facilitate terrorism. At the same time, we've encountered aliens from 180 different countries. Again, many of those countries who harbor terrorist organizations that want to bring harm to the United States. That's why the chairman of Homeland Security, Mark Green, was so focused on the 1.7 million gotaways. And that's why the director of the FBI was clearly concerned, because he knows the threats are already here.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And our national security risks here at home are not being addressed by that border bill because most of the money is going to Ukraine, Todd. Well, let's take a question about that Ukrainian issue from the audience over here real quick. Go ahead, Shell. I see some hands up over there.
We've got Wib up next, sir.
Go ahead, Wood.
Thank you, Colonel, and thank you for your service, Mr. Wood. Uh, you guys have been really hitting a lot of different issues, and I've been writing down questions on my whiteboard so that I can stay relevant and ask a question about what you're currently asking about. Well, I have nothing to ask, so I'm going to ask this question, Mr. Wood. Paying the price, is that something that I can read and have it so that it can be useful for my understanding in America's relationship with Iran?
Yes, he's talking about my recent book, Paying the Price, The Untold Story of the Iranian Resistance. And I spent a lot of time with the MEK in their home in Albania, their camp where they were relocated, in their headquarters in Paris. And it's a book of, it's not a lot of my personal thoughts. It's transcriptions of a lot of the interviews I did with the members, all the way from the ones that started it to the survivors of the 1988 massacre where they killed 30,000 in a month. And they've executed 120,000 of these people over the last 40 years. So yes, it will give you a taste of what's could come here, and it will give you an idea of the resilience and what it takes to fight a thuggery regime like the mullahs in Iran. And that's what their slogan is: we have to pay the price to bring down tyranny. And I met with, young girls who had their hands blown off. I mean, just horrific injuries. And I don't want that to happen to my children. So that's why I put the book out. But thank you for the question.
That is a great question. If you go back and research my shows, I've done 3 or 4 shows with MEK representatives, and one of them was the son of an original MEK leader. And they're fascinating, and those guys still owe me an invitation to Albania to see them one of these days. So on the Ukraine issue with Tucker Carlson, if I see the EU, or at least the reporting is on social media, that the EU is trying to do sanctions on Carlson's travel now. Is that accurate?
Yeah, the EU is tyrannical. It's essentially, look, what we're dealing with is a merger of fascism and communism, essentially, where the leadership of the Western world has been co-opted and infiltrated and captured. And so we have to fight back against that with every bone we have, peacefully. But yes, the EU is trying to stop Tucker's travel because, look, they have a system in Europe where people are just uninformed. We're much more informed here, and we have to keep that going with media like this and with, Patriot TV and the Maness Show and everything. So this is really important to support free media. Do not plug into the matrix with legacy media. Don't sit with Fox on all night. Turn it off and find other options. There's plenty out there now because you're giving them your dollars. They're getting ratings. They're surveilling your data. If you're doing it on your phone or even your TV, they're surveilling what you do. And they may be listening to you. So just unplug from the matrix and find other alternatives.
Great advice. So let me get your thoughts, Todd, on the strategic perspective. Where do you see, especially the fight in Ukraine and the status of NATO and the EU and the United States? Where do you see that landing, both before the presidential election, which is only 9 months from now, but more importantly, what needs to be done by the next president, assuming it's not Joe Biden, and I think it's going to be Donald Trump. There's no doubt in my mind, no matter what happens between now and then with all the crazy warfare going on against him. So where do you see this issue landing in 9 months? And then what's the way forward that a Trump administration needs to be seriously looking at, especially on the Ukraine-Russia issue, beyond just, I'm going to sit them down and stop the war immediately?
Well, we did a quick plug. We did a great Ukrainian sit-rep show on armedforces.press today. Check it out there if you want the absolute update. It's about 30 minutes from our sources in Kiev. But the next president, I mean, look, the country's been depopulated. It's gone from 42 million to 28, at least 500,000 dead, many more maimed. They're recruiting 60-year-olds and 15-year-old girls now to fight the Russians. It's horrific what's happening to the Ukrainian people. I think the next president needs to find a way to secure peace immediately, get a ceasefire, stop the war. You're going to have to give Russia Donbass and Crimea, but they'll probably be okay with that. Ukraine it needs to be a neutral state going forward, and that's just the way it is. We have the Monroe Doctrine, or at least we used to. We didn't want Cuba 90 miles off our shore. Well, we've got long-range missiles that are hitting Moscow inside Ukraine today, and we're behind it all. So they can't live with that, is my point. And we have to find a way to live with each other. And I hope Tucker brings a lot of that out and brings some truth to the people of the world with his interview, which I am told is about 2 hours long. And one of the things I've been told is that he will tell the world that Joe Biden is not running this country. So we will see what happens.
And I've seen him kind of refer to that statement before Putin. I mean, I think he really, he's sincere when he says that. It'll be interesting to see, because I'm looking forward to it. It's just, the media, to find Putin live or to find him in a recent speech that's translated accurately and all that is extremely difficult to do in a timely manner. You can eventually find stuff, but this stuff ought to be being shown on American media outlets every single day, because he's doing something every day, but they're totally suppressing it because it's hurting their narrative when he just comes out and puts some facts out.
Well, the Zelensky's repressed the church. We're about to put out a big piece on that. The priests of the Orthodox Church have been harmed. The media has been harmed. We had an American journalist captured and tortured to death in prison. There's nothing being done about it in Ukraine. Gonzalo Lira. So, the opposition forces have been repressed. It's a dictatorship. It's an illegitimate government. They're not following the Constitution. The parliament is not legitimate because the elections were skewed. I could go on and on and on. And I love the Ukrainian people. I had a refugee family in my house for over almost a year. They're very warm to me. They literally saved my life. So I'm not against the Ukrainian people. Yeah. I'm not pro-Putin. I'm pro-truth. And let's get peace in that part of the world, because these people are suffering and it's not okay.
You're absolutely right, man. It's suffering is what really bothers me, and suffering for a reason that's really not valid anymore. It's so obvious with all these fatalities and everything that are happening in the entire society. The age structure is being destroyed on the Ukrainian side. It's really sad. We pray for them. We pray for them. We pray for all of the folks that are in conflict on both sides, because it's horrific. It's the worst thing that man can do to other men, and I mean that in a generic sense, folks. And Todd, I really appreciate you spending so much time with us today. We covered a lot of ground, but it's important for people to know about your work and to get out there and subscribe to your stuff and read up on it, man. I appreciate you. Where can they find you on X?
I'm at Real L Todd Wood on X, at Real L Todd Wood, and cdm.press is the main website. If you want to look at some of the books I've written, it's ltoddwood.com. Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I look forward to having you back sometime in the future. Well, that's L. Todd Wood, CD Media CEO, former Special Ops helicopter pilot, Air Force officer, good friend of freedom and truth. And go follow him, subscribe to his sites, and check it out, because that's what you're going to get, is the truth and the facts. And that's what we try to do here. And tomorrow is Truth Thursday, and we've got John Lott talking about the Uvalde school shooting report. It should be very interesting. I'm Rob Maness, right here at Patriot.tv. We'll see you tomorrow.